evening. She's lain in a darkened room, unable to move or speak for 4 years. Now, a young ME sufferer has told us of the terrible effects of this illness. She says it was as though she'd died.
Suzy Tayler says the illness has taken a terrible toll on her family. They have grieved for her as if she was lost. Now her condition has improved, enough for her to explain the devastating condition, which even doctors cannot fully explain. Here's Stacey Poole.
Suzy is really in a living death state. She just lies there in a dark room, cold, with earplugs in. She can't bear the noise or the light. She cannot turn herself over.
This was Suzy Tayler a year ago. She'd been lying in this darkened, chilled room for nearly 3 years, unable to move and in constant pain. This is severe ME at its most extreme.
They're just forgotten people, and I think, you know, the public in general think of ME as people that are just a bit tired or have to go to bed early, and they have no idea, or they're not aware at all of how severe that it can become.
It could reduce the strongest man in the world to tears to see what's happened to Suze.
A year on and things have slowly improved, and this is Suzy today, captured on home video as she made her first trip out of her bedroom in 4 years. A major step forward, but she still totally relies on her parents. She's unable to walk and can only talk for a few minutes a day. But despite that, she's agreed to be interviewed to try and make people understand what it's like to live with ME. I began by asking her how it's affected her and her family's lives.
Torn the family apart, really, and it's like I died and now I've come back.
Do you feel like that? Do you feel like you died?
I felt like I've been in a coma, but I suppose for my relatives and that, it's like they've been grieving for someone that's died, and it's been very emotional seeing everyone again.
Can you describe how it feels to have ME?
It's awful. It's just, I still get a lot of head pain. My head's a lot better than it was last year, but I get a lot of pain on top and pressure, and it's foggy all the time. When I have a bad day or hour or even week, I feel really ill in my eyes, and they sting, feel like they've been opened in chlorine, and they're all puffy and red. Mum and Dad can tell when I'm not good.
So does she ever think about the future?
Sometimes, if I'm not having a good day, and I'd be upset because I did know what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, and I really wanted to go travelling and things. So I was very independent, and now I completely depend on my parents. But I'm looking forward to next year, see what I can do, and maybe I can't wait to go outside and can't wait to walk and things. So I've got a lot of support.
That support from her family has been unwavering. Not for 1 hour have they left her over the past 4 years, so she knows she's not alone. And finally, their dedication is starting to pay off.
She has made amazing progress since last year. I mean, what she can do now, you know, in the ME world is very, very good. But, you know, realistically, you know, it's no life at all for an 18-year-old.
But Suzy's 18th birthday was a huge milestone, the first cards and presents she'd opened for 3 years, and the first time she'd seen her relatives since she was 14.
When I saw my nan and granddad, they were the first relatives I saw. I was all filling up when they came in the room, and I hugged my nan, and then I hugged my granddad, and I didn't want to let go because I was going to burst into tears. And then when I pulled away, I couldn't look at them. I just kept talking to try and hold back the tears. But I did have a little cry after all my relatives had gone that I'd seen.
It's a tragic reality, but at least there is now some progress.
Little milestones like her 18th birthday must give you some hope. I mean, the pictures of her smiling.
Yeah, I mean, mixed feelings really. Obviously, you know, we made the best of the day, and obviously with a lot of rest, Suzy, you know, enjoyed her day, but you can't help comparing what it should have been for her.
Do you think about the future, or do you try and block that out?
No, we don't think about Suzy's future. If you really think about the situation, it is just heartbreaking, and you know, you can get very down about it, but obviously we try not to be positive for Suzy.
I do have my dad times when I'm having a bad day, but I've just got to keep going, and hopefully one day I might get my life back.
Incredible. incredible story and an incredible family. Well, Stacey Poole joins us now. Stacey, what's made the difference to Suzy's condition, do you think? Has she received any medical care?
No, none, and that's the shocking thing about ME. These families are left to cope all on their own. Because doctors have no idea for so many years what caused ME, they had no idea how to treat it. But what Suzy's family has found work is increasing their activity level by just seconds a week, and I mean literally seconds a week, until the point now where she can actually do 15 minutes of activity. But in doing that, she is exhausted and she lies there motionless for the rest of the day to recover.
And is there any medical treatment for these patients?
No, not at the moment, but next week in Health Watch we do have news of a medical breakthrough. Scientists do believe they have found the cause, and with finding the cause they think they have found a cure which should be on the market within 2 years. So exciting news next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Stacey, thanks very much indeed. Mary.
And last week we started our series of reports looking at the condition ME. We heard the story of 18-year-old Suzy Tayler, who's been confined to a darkened room for 4 years, unable to move or to speak. Well, slowly she is making progress, enough anyway to tell us of the devastating effect that the disease has had on her life and how she lives in hope of a cure.
But now there is a breakthrough for sufferers like Suzy. Scientists have found genetic differences in ME patients which they believe could lead to a cure within a year. Here's Stacey Poole with this week's Health Watch.
For years, people have dismissed ME as yuppie flu or all in the mind. Only those who live with it know the devastating reality.
Nobody knows how awful we feel every minute of every day. And it just gets me cross when people don't believe it.
Unless you experience it, it's hard to understand how much of your life is actually taken away by it.
A lot of GPs and doctors still think it's a mental illness. This is outrageous this day and age.
These patients and hundreds of thousands of others have battled for years against doctors, psychiatrists and the public who believed ME was a psychological condition. But now they have a breakthrough. Scientists have discovered clear physical changes, a difference in the genes of patients with ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. 15 of the genes were found to be 4 times as active as those in normal people. Now, many of these malfunctioning genes regulate the immune system. So, in simplistic terms, the immune system is working overtime, causing the patient to suffer extreme exhaustion. So, what's causing this?
I think that virus infection does play a key role in chronic fatigue syndrome, and several different viruses have been shown to trigger the disease.
So if they now know that a virus is to blame, how long will it be before we have a cure?
1 year to a cure and approximately 1 year to a diagnostic test.
So it really is imminent?
Yes, it is.
That a solution could be found to this awful condition?
Definitely.
At last, not only proof this is not a psychological condition, but a cure is on the horizon.
This is exciting and gives hope to, the many, many sufferers of this dreadful illness.
Now they've had all this research and they've found something. I'm just so happy that it's, proved people wrong.
But incredibly, none of this research is being funded by the government. All of it comes from charitable donations. So where is the government spending its money?
Tends to be put towards a psychological type approach on the one hand, and on the other towards management strategies and therapies that really don't work.
And this angers the families who are so desperate for a cure.
It's having an adverse effect on her brain, and I don't know whether that is recoverable. It's having an adverse effect on her heart and her cardiovascular system. I don't know whether that's recoverable. So I think that every year that passes it's less likely, and that's why I want something done quickly.
The government need to put money into research for this. They've got to. I mean, Suzy's already lost 4 years of her life. How many more has she got to lose for the lack of funding for research?
Who wants to be like this? I'm 18 and all my friends are partying, and it's the age to go to clubs and pubs, and they're all driving and going to uni. And I was so not a person to stay in bed. I had a very active lifestyle, very sporty and busy, and it's kind of torn the family apart, really.
This is a national disgrace. This is a hidden national scandal, this illness, and it's time that it was changed.
Clearly desperate for help there. Well, Stacey joins us in the studio now. Stacey, look, I remember last year they reported that the government had given £11 million towards this illness, but did none of it go towards finding a cure?
No, not a penny, and that's despite the fact that 250,000 people suffer from ME. In fact, the government have never actually backed any research projects either into the cause of ME or a cure for it. Where they've spent that £11 million is on 12 regional centres. But what those regional centres are offering is just management techniques, teaching patients how to cope with it, which, to be honest, they found out for themselves. And the fact that there's only 12 of them means they're miles away from most people. Our nearest one is in Southampton. So for the severely affected, they just can't possibly get there.
So what is the point in investing in them?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I have no idea why they've invested in them. I mean, next week in our Health Watch series, we're going to the one in Southampton and asking that question. What are you going to be offering ME patients? But in my opinion, they would be much better spending that £11 million on research.
OK, Stacey, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, also tonight, we're presenting our final report on the devastating condition ME. Over the past 2 weeks, we've met dozens of patients whose lives have been shattered. Many aren't believed by the medical profession, and even those who are often find that very little treatment is available.
But as we reported, there's been a breakthrough in genetic research which proves this is not a psychological condition. So far, the government has not invested a penny in biomedical research. They've only funded centres which help patients cope with ME. For tonight's Health Watch, I've been looking at whether these centres are really working.
The government has invested £11.2 million to try and help the 250,000 people whose lives have been devastated by this condition. Patients like Lauren, who's been bedbound since she was 12.
It terrifies me that I might not get my life back.
Our lives have been turned upside down. I have to bath my 20-year-old daughter, where at 4 and 5 she was quite capable of bathing herself.
You would imagine £11 million would make a difference to families like these, but what is actually being provided in our region?
Well, so far, very little. Of the 12 centres across the country, not one of them is in our area. There is one in Surrey at St Heliers Hospital in Carshalton and one in Southampton. But for many, that's over an hour's drive away. Those in Berkshire have nothing, not even a consultant in the area with any specialist knowledge.
The government just don't seem interested.
If I really stopped and thought about it, I would be in tears all day, every day. What I've got to do now is try and channel the emotion into positive action and try and get something done.
In Southampton, the team have been awarded £100,000, and that buys this rather unclinical-looking room in a warehouse in the city centre, with 2 occupational therapists and a GP. But they already have a waiting list with over 70 patients on it, and they're only offering 2 sessions a week.
What it will be offering is management and coping strategies. Now, this isn't enough. It's not something that can be helped by, doing a few exercises and resting. That there are serious abnormalities in the biomedical systems of people which do need addressing.
We are aware that these people are particularly badly off, and we do want to try and do what we can.
But if they're really going to make a difference to these patients, surely £100,000 is just a drop in the ocean.
The Department of Health have done their calculations, and this is the investment that we have. So we have to start and work with this. But clearly we would like to improve on this if we possibly can.
Realistically, though, it's not going to make a massive difference to many people for a while, is it?
Well, I mean, you say that, but I actually think that even a one-off visit can make a lot of difference to some people. Just beginning to appreciate that there is someone who understands the difficulty, that actually this is now being taken seriously by the health service locally. I think that is an enormous step forward.
But for those patients who've already been suffering for years, this is too little, too late.
My frustration that I've had for quite a while now has actually turned to anger.
I've got ahead of me years of sitting like this waiting to get my life back.
Well, it is an awful situation, and we did ask the Department of Health whether more money is going to be invested in our area and whether more money is going to be made available for further research, but we're still waiting for a reply.